Shalom, welcome to Riv Kush, a CJN podcast featuring conversations with Jews of color discussing all things Jewish. So my guest today is Loolwa Khazzoom. What a fascinating person. So let me tell you a little backstory before I delve into her bio. I believe, Loolwa, you reached out to me on Facebook. And when you did, of course, I perused your page and I was like, she is super, super cool. And I think immediately I reached out to you and said, hey, I'd love to interview you for the podcast because it's a moment that I could not let pass because you are super cool. So let me tell you a bit about her, and I'm going to read it out to you because it's a lot and it's all amazing. Iraqi American Jewish musician, writer, educator, activist Khazzoom is the founder of an award-winning alternative rock band, Iraqis in Pajamas, which combines Iraqi Jewish prayer with original lyrics and music, singing in English, Hebrew, and the Iraqi dialect of Judeo-Arabic. She's also the founder of the newly emerging vocals and piano duo Shaddai Chants. In 1990, at the age of 20, she pioneered the Jewish Multiculturalism movement, bringing to the mainstream both awareness and celebration of global Jewish heritage. So for all of you who thought conversations around Jewish diversity is a new thing, clearly it is not a new thing. The first woman worldwide known to lead egalitarian Sephardi Mizrahi services. As part of her groundbreaking work, because, just in case you thought that she wasn't doing enough, as part of her groundbreaking work, Khazzoom implemented the first ever curriculum on Jewish communities across the globe. I gotta take a breath. So, welcome. Whoa! And that, believe it or not, is the annotated biography, correct?
Correct. When I send my business coach an update for the week, he typically gets back to me and says, I read it and then I took a nap.
You're amazing. This is such good work that you have done. So I want to cast back to 1990, when you were 20, because I did allude to it because, in this day and age, when you're on social media, people are like, everybody's talking diversity, but they're all talking diversity and multiculturalism like it's something that just popped up, over the pandemic, right? Like, it's like they don't realize this work was being done decades and decades ago. So I want you to talk about this Jewish multiculturalism movement and what led you to do that.
Well, I grew up in a home that was Orthodox and followed the Iraqi Jewish traditions, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s. It was very rare back then to preserve Sephardic or Mizrahi heritage. We weren't calling ourselves Mizrahi back then. It was just kind of anyone who wasn't Ashkenazi was lumped into Sephardic, even though that was not accurate. And so growing up, I had, let's call it 3 different buckets of identity. So I was Middle Eastern, I was Jewish, and I was female. And I felt like a ball in one of those pinball machines that just got bounced around, from one place to the other. So in the Jewish community, I was Middle Eastern and female, so I was dealing with racism and sexism. In the women's community and the feminist community, I was Jewish and Middle Eastern, so I was dealing with anti-Semitism, which I actually call racism, and I'm going to bookmark that. But since people colloquially refer to it as anti-Semitism, I'm calling it that, and racism. Okay. And then like in the general world, I was facing all of it, anti-Semitism, racism, and misogyny. So, it was this, as a child, it was a very painful experience of wanting to belong and being a very heart-centered, passionate, devoted person from a very young age. I'll just give one example, is that by the age of 8, I could lead the Iraqi Jewish prayers, not only singing or reading the prayers, but doing it in the authentic Iraqi accent with the ah and the qa and the wa and the ta. So, people...
Yeah, what I can't do.
Yeah. So people were surprised because I have an American accent, when I'm speaking English. But then when I jump into Hebrew prayers, people tell me I sound like their grandmother from, Iraq or Yemen or fill in the blank. And yet, because I was a girl, not only was I not invited to pray, but it was this attitude of, oh God, wait, we can't wait till she's 12 so we can shove her in the back behind the wall. And there was a lot of arguments and negotiations, and finally it was tolerated, and I emphasize the word tolerated, and it was marginally tolerated, that I would lead the supplementary prayers because they didn't count, and I was very aware of why I was allowed to lead those, up until I was 12. But every now and then, a boy dressed in, what was it called? Ben Davis. Back then, it was kind of like, the gangster look of the 70s, would walk into the synagogue. Right. Meanwhile, I'm all dressed for Shabbat. And I'd like to add here, side note, we live 3 miles away from the synagogue, and we walked there and back. So I'm a 6-year-old kid, 7-year-old kid,
Wow.
8-year-old kid, walking there and back 6 miles every Shabbat, right? And yet when this boy would walk in who barely could read Hebrew, didn't know anything about, our heritage, they would literally pull me off the bima and shove this boy, and there would be men surrounding him, like panting after him, encouraging him, helping him. Whereas I was relegated to the sidelines, and I could do a perfect delivery with the pronunciation, like, of the way it was back in the day. And it was completely devalued. And anyhow, so that's just a snippet. I mean, I could go on and on about just that segment of my life for hours, but let's fast forward to my teenage years. By the time I was a teenager, by the time I was 14, I just stopped attending services. Still Orthodox, still practicing, but I was just like, F this. No. And I started dreaming then. I knew I was going to do something. I didn't know what it would be. Back then I was thinking maybe I'll start like a Jewish Multicultural Synagogue. And my vision was always really inclusive. It wasn't, I'm going to start an Iraqi synagogue. It was like, I want a synagogue where we all come together and we're all celebrating all of the Jewish heritage from all over the world, because it, honest to God, Rivka, never made sense to me. Why do you just want to know one prayer for the holiday or one song for the holiday or one tradition for the holiday when there's like 50? I don't get it.
100%.
I don't get
100%. It. And let's be clear, it's often only one particular type that we have to learn, that they tell us to learn for the holidays, right?
Well, what are you referring to? Because I want to understand what you're saying. Because what I was saying is,
like you said, there's so many different traditions, so many different things that we can bring in. This multiculturalism. And I know in my experience that is never really, exactly what you said, it's never really brought into the synagogue world. It is almost always, the majority is Ashkenazi trope. Ashkenazi.
Exactly. And I want to also
people
add,
sitting there may not be.
Exactly. Thank you. Oh God, I feel like jumping all over the map now, because that brings up something.
That's cool.
Let me
Let's
just
jump.
Side note for a minute. Okay. So we're now jumping to after I started doing this work. And back then, I would approach a Jewish leader, say rabbi in a synagogue, and tell them that I offer these Jewish multicultural programs. And their response almost always will be, well, we don't have any Sephardim here, so it's not something they'd be interested in. And I would respond with a few different things. I'd say, first of all, I challenge you on that assumption, because you don't know who you have in your congregation. If you're not already offering Jewish diversity, like, a multicultural approach to the prayers, or some kind of consciousness, like a base consciousness that we exist, no one's going to tell you.
Exactly.
So you may not be able to identify from somebody's face color alone. I'm a perfect example. My mom's actually, people can't see me, but my mom is a Jew by choice, from Irish, Danish, and Welsh background. My dad's an Iraqi Jew. So, I have light skin. I have dark hair, dark eyes, Middle Eastern nose, but I have light skin. Right. So everyone thinks I'm Ashkenazi. Like, I never stand out, but I am super not Ashkenazi.
I love that. I am super not Ashkenazi.
I mean, people always think there's an assumption, there's an arrogance that because I'm American, therefore I should know this, that, and the other things. Like, why don't you know my stuff? Why should I know your stuff?
Exactly.
The fact that the first time when I was at Columbia University and I walked into the high holiday services, I was lost. I had no idea what was going on because I had never been to an Ashkenazi high holiday service in my life. And people were like so baffled by that. How can you not know? I'm like, well, do you know mine? No. So hi. Anyhow. Anyhow, so what I said to them, I made a couple points. I said, first of all, you don't know because unless you make it a safe space for them to come forward, they're not going to. Second of all, are we Jews or are we not? Because if we're not, we need to start separating and be clear about that. Because my sensation is that all Jews are my family. Anything that happened anywhere in the Jewish world affects me personally. I personally care. I personally want to know. And guess what? By that point, I did know all the Ashkenazi stuff. So I was like, what makes you think that if someone's Ashkenazi, they're not going to be interested? And that's where I started saying things like, why would someone want to know one song for this holiday when they can know 12? Why would somebody want to be limited in their understanding of who or what Jews are? Jews typically spend so much time looking outside our community to make it more fun or interesting or diverse. I'm like, let's look inside. So that was actually one of the first programs I ever offered. Thank you. That was actually one of the first programs I ever offered. It was, what was it called? Multiculturalism in our own backyard. And I was pushing this idea really hard. I was like, why is it that Jews, Ashkenazi, light-skinned Jews, are disproportionately at the forefront of diversity movements and yet completely oblivious or resistant or hostile when it comes to Jews of color? And I remember once, it's hard to tell my story without kind of sharing the particulars, but I try not to because I never want to shame anyone. And it's not about who a person is or what an organization is. It's about what the behavior was, right? So I was at an event at Harvard, my junior year, and it was about Black Jewish relations. And the speaker's going on and on about how we have to build bridges and this and that, and also between Arabs and Jews, blah, blah. And I was just like, what? I raised my hand. I'm like, okay, hi. I haven't heard anything about Black Jews. Right. And I haven't heard anything about Middle Eastern Jews. Why are you trying to artificially construct these bridges when we are the bridge? You don't have to work at it.
Hold on. Pause for the applause. Because I'm telling you, I've never understood that, especially when it comes to Black Jews. I'm like, why are you going to this person and that person? I'm sitting right here, and I'm part of the family.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. Let me tell you something. I want to just speak to how bad it was back then. So this is now, let's see, I was living in Berkeley, so it was mid-90s, maybe late 90s. A friend of mine was a Black Jewish woman, and she and I went to an event on Black Jewish relations. Again, nothing about Black Jews. And she, then spoke up. She's like, I'm a Black Jewish woman. Where do you see me in this? And this guy starts talking about how Jews are white. And she's like, hi, can you look at my face, please? This is not a white face. And it was fascinating to me that moment because I was like, oh my God, it's like, and I've seen this play out over and over again in different contexts, but people start off with an idea and it's so entrenched. Jews are white. Therefore, when I'm telling you about my indigenous Middle Eastern family, you're trying to figure out how we got there from Poland. When a Black Jewish woman is sitting and talking to you about how she is both Black and Jewish, you start, Ashkenazi-splaining to her that Jews are white.
You know what I love what you said?
What is that?
What I love what you said when they're looking at you and trying to figure out how did you get to Iraq from Poland? And I'm like, to hear those words, it is so ludicrous. It's more like, how did you get from Iraq to Poland?
Thank you.
Because let me tell you, really?
Thank you. My mom, listen, I want to tell you something, another side note. To me, I think, an influence of how fluid identity is, my mom had light skin, blue eyes, used to be blonde hair, became brown when she got older, but super white chick, right? But she, not only, it's people, first of all, people assume she converted because of my dad. No, she started a quest when she was a child. And she went to different churches at first, and then she started studying world religions. And it was only when she found Judaism, she felt this profound sense of home, finally.
Okay.
And so she converted on her own. And when she met my dad, my dad had been affected by the intense racism in Israel, and he was trying to blend in and pass as Ashkenazi, right? But every now and then he'd slip up, like they're driving, on a road trip or something.
Slip up,
he starts
sorry.
humming. Yeah, no, I said that intentionally. Yeah, exactly. So they'd be driving on some road trip, and he'd start, singing some Iraqi Jewish song. And my mom be like, "What's that?" And he'd get all flustered and embarrassed. "Oh, nothing. It's just from the old country." Because he was taught to be ashamed of it. She'd go, "No, that's beautiful. Sing it." I'm feeling emotional even as I say this, So it's my mom. My mom pulled it out of my dad. So my sister is 6 years older than I am. And I'm telling you, I'm all over the map. I know, but
that's okay. I'm loving this. I'm loving this.
My sister is 6 years older than I am. And when she was born, my dad sang to her French lullabies. Why French? Because the Iraqi Jews went to the French Alliance school. So they spoke French from a very young age. So he sung French lullabies when she went to sleep. By the time I was born 6 years later, my mom's influence had turned everything around, and he was singing to me Judeo-Arabic songs or, Iraqi Hebrew songs. And so I grew up with the Iraqi Jewish songs and prayers. It is just so in my cells. And again, I'm going to reference something I said before, yet people assume that I learned it from tapes or something, because how could somebody still be doing that? I had a woman at the Israeli airport. I'm always, by the way, even when I was with my Ashkenazi, super light skinned boyfriend, he just went on through. I got pulled to the side. I'm always pulled to the side because I have a long
I hear you on
name.
that. I hear you on that. Or they talk to my very obviously Ashkenazi Israeli partner. They talk to him, but they're staring at me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And this one time it was so bad, like, I'm just kind of grilled. And, I have to tell you something. Again, I'm all over the map. But like, I know why they're asking me questions. Why are you here? My family, blah, blah. What are their names? And I know what they're going for. They want to hear like, Devora or something. Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
All of my aunts, I had 6 aunts. They all, alayhim shalom, they all have since transitioned, but they all had Arabic names when they were born. Judeo-Arabic names, which is a combination of Hebrew and Arabic. It's the Jewish dialect. And they all switched them to Hebrew. Why? Because they were constantly harassed. So what do I do at the airport? I switched them back. So they'd ask me, they're trying to find out what my aunt's names are because they want to find out if I'm really Jewish or if I'm, a Muslim terrorist or something.
Let's trip
like,
her up. Let's see if we can trip her up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I go, well, let's see. And I say it as heavy as I can. I go, there's halwa, lataifa, and I just kind of go on. And at some point,
God, continue. I love it.
Well, at some point they get it that I'm effing with them. They're like, okay, because
very,
I get really in
them. Oh, very funny. Go.
I know.
Yell.
I know.
Go.
No, I get really in their face, and I'm like wearing Star of David necklace, and I grew up Orthodox, so they start grilling me on religious stuff, and I'm like, let me school you on Judaism.
Because they don't know. Because they don't know.
Exactly. And so at some point they get really flustered, and they're like, okay. But this one woman, like super blonde hair, blue-eyed Ashkenazi woman says to me, "Why do you still have an Arabic name?" I'm like, oh my God! I wanted to throttle her. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like the heartbreak that I have of the destruction of our collective, again, I'm feeling emotional, of our collective global Jewish heritage, and you have the nerve to ask me, like when I was a child, everyone tried to give me a nickname, and I said, no, you will say my name in full, and I made them practice. When they couldn't say the ch and Khazzoom, I'm like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do it. You got to gargle.
But you're right.
Anyhow.
You're right. And it hurts. You're right.
Yeah.
But it hurts. And then I think to myself, you want to talk about names? You're holding on to names that have meaning, that have history, that say who we are as a global people. Yet I am now facing people who have change their names to blend in with a society that has naught to do with us, and you're standing in front of me and questioning my name.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Thank you. I want to tell you how bad it is. I'm named after my grandmother. My aunts, her daughters, tried to get me to change my name to Lily, because anyone that you meet that's my generation or above who's named Lily, they were named Loolwa. And Lily is the name of a toilet paper company in Israel. And I said, wait, hold on. You want me to change my name to the name of a toilet paper company instead of keep your mother's name? That is how internalized and deep and effed up this stuff is. It is mind-boggling, and it just passes every day as normal.
Wow. Yes, it does. And it's sad. It's actually beyond sad.
Yeah.
It's hurtful.
Yeah.
Because it leads to those internalized feelings of, I'm not good enough. I don't want to be found out, that your father had. Or I've heard stories about people who drop their kids off at Hebrew school, which is basically Ashkenazi based. And if they weren't Ashkenazi, they'd say, remember, leave your Sephardi at the door. Leave your Mizrahi at the door.
Right. Well, this is how it starts, because you were asking me to jump back to childhood. So my dad was a professor at McGill in Montreal. We lived in Montreal till I was 5, and then he got
so you have a Canadian connection.
Stanford. I do. And it was really funny because after Trump was elected, I was literally walking around circles, literally just circles in one room. For 3 hours, I walked in circles around a bed. I'm serious. That is all I did. I was in a trance. And I was like, let's see. I am Middle Eastern and female and Jewish. This should be interesting in Trump land. And then all my friends start calling me. They're all worried about me. And I'm like, look, I live 2 hours from the Canadian border. I think I'll be okay. But anyhow, so we moved to California for a year. Where is Stanford? Palo Alto. That's 1 hour from San Francisco. There were no Orthodox Jewish schools that were my sister's grade in Palo Alto at that time. So we moved to San Francisco. My dad commuted 2 hours a day. Why? So that we could go to an Orthodox Jewish school. Okay, what happened at that Orthodox Jewish school? Number one, every day we come home, my dad's like, what did you learn today? We learned about Hanukkah. We don't say Hanukkah, we say Hanukkah. What did you learn about Hanukkah? We play dreidels. We don't play dreidels. And I remember as a 6-year-old, I'm like, why are we going to this school when we have to relearn everything when we get home?
Seriously.
And at the age of 6, you mentioned that thing about the Iraq to Poland, not Poland to Iraq. At the age of 6, these rabbis were so baffled. What, Jews from Iraq? I said, okay, Abraham and Sarah? They came from Mesopotamia. That's Iraq. And why am I explaining this to you, Rabbi, when I'm a fourth of your size and you're a rabbi? Mm-hmm. Why am I, a 6-year-old, educating you?
Oh, you gave me a chill, because there is something that I say to people when I speak on, the story of us, so to speak. And I say to them, I said, all my life, when reading Torah, when reading the Chumash, whatever, I said, I will see reference to India. I will see reference to Ethiopia. To this day, I still can't find reference to Poland.
Thank you!
So what?
Thank you!
What is going on?
Listen, I had my most popular workshop that I gave for 20 years was Jews Afloat. And what it was I followed Jewish migration around the world from the days of Abraham and Sarah through the modern day. So it was in a context against a backdrop where people at best were talking about us and them. I'm like, no, there is no us, them. First we were here, then this happened, so we went here, then that happened, so we went there. Period. We're like one tree, lots of different branches. We're all interconnected, and we have the same common thread of story, right? So as I gave this presentation, it evolved over the years. I started getting more tech savvy, and the last iteration of it, which was now around 2008, 2009, was PowerPoint, and it starts off with a picture. It starts off with the word Jew, and I did that intentionally because people are uncomfortable with that word, and I challenge that. And then I ask people, okay, what just came to mind? And then I have pictures of Jerry Seinfeld, bagels and cream cheese, that kind of thing. I'm like, chances are this is what came to mind. And people are like, yeah. And then I have a next slide is Jews from all over the world, every single country. I'm like, this is actually what Jew means. And then I'm like, so how did we get to this disparity between what comes to mind and what actually is? And then I have this thing where, like, one line at a time, chronologically, I have the different Jewish communities come in, right? So the Ethiopian Jews are like 3,000 years before, and the like Chinese Jews are also about 3,000 years before. And the very last one, so it's like one at a time, and then the very last one, which is 500 to 1,000 years, is Ashkenazim. And then I turn that into red. The Ashkenazim becomes red. And I said, okay, I want you to look at this list and the timeline. The bottom, the last Jews to emerge on the scene are the Ashkenazim. And yet all of us up here who've been around for thousands of years are seen through, defined by, judged from the filter of the Ashkenazim, who are the new kids on the block.
Exactly.
Why? And then I dive in from there, into the whole presentation.
Dang. That is so powerful, because one of the things that drives me crazy is when people discover Jewish communities around the world.
Thank you.
And, when we discovered, oh my God, there's Ethiopian Jews. When we discover that there are Persian Jews, when we discover the Yemen, like, they keep discovering these Jews. And I keep saying to people, they've been here forever and a day. Because you didn't see them, just because they weren't on your radar, doesn't mean they did not exist. Did I say that right?
Well, see,
yes, I think.
That's the interesting thing, because, like, at the end of the day, it's the Ashkenazim who were provincial. And in being so provincial, they had so much ignorance. And it's such an ignorant thing to think that you know everything. That's like a manifestation of ignorance, But that actually leads to the core. There were like a few core principles of my work. One of them was, at the time that I was, coming of age and, starting to do this work publicly, you had the Jewish community, and I put Jewish in air quotes, and that was an Ashkenazi establishment. And if you were part of it, you, as you said, Rivka, a minute ago or a few minutes ago, you checked your identity at the doorstep in order to participate. So it's a different kind of racism. You're allowed to be here. We're not going to kick you out if you have dark skin, but you have to act like us. You got to do things the way we do things, and you can't challenge our paradigm. Okay, so there was the Ashkenazi community, and then there was the Sephardic separatist community, which was a very small group, very underfunded, very angry, and not getting anywhere with the Ashkenazi establishment. And I was like, well, this won't do. And what I wanted to see was to bring the not only Sephardim, but everybody, right? So I'm like, where I go, everyone comes with me, right? I wanted to bring all of that into the mainstream and challenge the paradigm, but do so in a way that didn't shame. So the Sephardic separatist community back then, it's like, these horrible Ashkenazim, and they're racist, and this opens a whole Pandora's box. But it's like, I think that I was just thinking actually this morning when I was drinking my morning coffee, I was like, I think there's like a difference between when something is a tool and when it becomes a weapon. So I think having consciousness about racism and dynamics of racism is a tool, but it can flip at some point and become a weapon. And that 100%. Doesn't take us to where we want to go, which is love. And so what I did was, instead of shaming and pointing fingers, I said, okay, look, like, especially when I give programs to Jewish educators, I say, look, you're a product of your own Jewish education. In your Jewish education, you learned about Jews from Poland and Germany. You learned about the traditions. You learned about the value. You developed an association, a heartfelt association. This is Jewish. You did not learn about Jews from other parts of the world. There's no way, no matter how heart-centered you are, no matter how interested you are, no matter how devoted you are, that, yes, I want to do this, you cannot suddenly flip a switch and become an expert on Jews from Portugal or India or Yemen or Brazil. You can't. But you can do this. When you're talking about Jewish practice or Jewish history, probably what you know is Jewish practice or history from Central and Eastern Europe. So say that. Because the core problem is that people think they already know. When you go to Jewish school, you think you've learned Jewish education. They don't know that they don't know. If you say, this is Jewish tradition from Central and Eastern Europe, You don't have to say more than that. That already leaves room, space. That already begs the question, well, what is Jewish tradition from somewhere else?
Yes.
When
what
people
else?
have that when people have that curiosity, they can go on their own journey and discover it. You don't have to be the one to provide it to them, right?
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you. And another core piece of my work, and it's interesting because if you fast forward 30 years, it makes sense that I ended up running a PR company for 10 years.
Yeah.
Back when I was a teenager, I'm like, wait, why do we say Jewish and Sephardic? I mean, we might as well pack it up and go home. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. And I realized people have an association with the word Jewish. Jewish feels Jewish, right? Sephardic feels extracurricular, other, out there, not me, not right?
Extracurricular.
And so every time that Sephardim will call something Sephardic, like organizations in the Sephardic community, they were perpetuating the cycle. So what I did that was different was I started creating programs about Jewish history from blood, Jewish songs, like Jewish high holiday songs from Yemen, Jewish from blah, blah, blah. And what I noticed that happened was, this is circa 1990. So now we're coming back to your original question from half an hour ago. So what happened, I'm going to take a step back for a minute. I'm going to come right back to that point, but I want to take a step back just to kind of get you here. So I went to Barnard, which is the Women's College of Columbia University. And the reason that I went there was because I grew up as an Orthodox Jew in public schools. That was hell. Hell.
Think?
I won't get into details, but I will give you just one example. There was a math teacher who hated Jews and scheduled every test, pop quiz. He would make stuff up just to flunk me. He would do it on the Jewish holiday or the day after. When I was a very strong student. I loved learning. I came in to my teachers at the beginning of the year with a Jewish calendar with all of the Jewish holy days circled in red. I said, I need to be gone for these days for religious observance. I'm not allowed to study. Would you please give me assignments ahead of time so that I don't fall behind? He threw it in my face. It literally hit my face. He said, you want to take a vacation? That's your problem. This is one small sliver of what I encountered. I actually wrote a huge article about it, but I just want to bookmark that. When I went to Barnard, I was going to colleges. I was touring the East Coast colleges. When I went to Barnard, I'm getting emotional again. We were touring the library. I'm really getting emotional. I might actually cry. This is how big a deal it is. And I'm freaking like 52 now. Hold on.
Things stay deep. Things stay deep, right?
And people don't know, the way people talk about Jews, like we run everything or whatever, like they don't know how hard it is,
Yeah.
So we were at the library. Yeah. And the tour guide goes, and here's where we have cassette tapes of all of the classes from the Jewish holidays. So if you miss a class, you can listen to this tape and catch up. And I grew up in San Francisco where people didn't even know what, maybe they knew Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur at best. They didn't know what the heck Sukkot, Simchat Torah, any of that. No. Maybe, mostly they knew Passover and Hanukkah, right? That's it.
Right.
They had Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchat Torah. Every freaking Jewish holiday was on a tape, and I believe I burst into tears. And I went to Barnard. And I have a lot to say on this too. Another side note, and then I'll get back to that.
You know what though?
The programs.
Something that seems to people listening seems like not that huge. Okay, so there are tapes. I don't think they. I hope people can understand the magnitude of that, and how. I don't even have words. Like I would have been blown away myself. I would have been.
They may not understand the magnitude. I have an article called Merry Holidays, and it's part of my, when someone becomes a Patreon member, they have access to hundreds of articles and thousands of blog posts that I've written. But they can also just jump online. This one was published in the Jewish Journal. It's called Merry Holidays, and it gets into the weeds about this. And I actually wrote my senior thesis. I every single class that I took at Barnard was to prepare me because I knew what thesis I wanted to write. Oh, most people don't do theses in their undergraduate. Barnard is a very intense. Yeah.
Okay, because that's like, I'm like, thesis.
Yeah, no, yeah, Barnard grads, your senior year, you work on a thesis, and it was supposed to be 50 pages. Mine was 172 because I was really into it. Because what I did was so every class I took at Barnard was so that I could write my thesis, which was on public school accommodation of students who miss school for holy day observances. I was looking at to what extent is it constitutional, to what extent is it practical. And because I wanted to prove it was constitutional, I went out of my way to prove that it wasn't. And it was really groundbreaking. I developed my own everything. I went, it just came out of my life experience as a student. And I chose 3 different school districts. One was in Brooklyn. One was in Poughkeepsie. So the Brooklyn one was so diverse there was no majority. The Poughkeepsie one was super white Christian. And then the one in Long Island was almost entirely Jewish. And I looked at the different models of accommodation, and I talked to the students in the administration, which had really different perspectives. And, and then I wrote about it, and I included my personal experience in the introduction, but it was very legal. Like I took law classes at Columbia University. They let you take first year law classes. And anyhow, where did let me try to find my way back. Oh, so that's how I ended up at Barnard. Okay.
Wow. No, it's a powerful story, because I was just thinking, in your public school with that teacher, all we ask for is not a heck of a lot. It's to be seen, right. It's to be heard, right? So let's just keep it at those two things. And yeah, with the public school teacher, you were seen and heard with such a negative in such a negative way, that to be seen and heard and understood in such a positive way, there are no words for that.
Exactly. Let me tell you something. In that article, Mary Holiday's, I wrote about my English teachers. I was a terrible writer when I got to high school. I had no idea what a bad writer I was until I started these English classes. And they were phenomenal. They were such devoted teachers. And I basically lived at their feet for 4 years. And every single test they allowed me to take, they didn't even say the day after. They gave me like a day or two to catch my breath and then take the test, and they trusted me. And I was the squeakiest, cleanest kid. Like, I didn't even cheat on homework. I was really adamant about learning things myself.
How do you cheat on homework?
I did. Oh, people do my homework for me. Do my homework for. I would never do that.
Okay. Because I'm like,
I would ask for help. Like, if I didn't understand something, I go to someone who could help me. I'm like, can you explain to me the thinking behind this? How does this work? But I want them to walk me through it so I could do it myself. I just wanted them to explain to me, like, I'm stuck. Help me get unstuck, right? Anyhow, but they trusted me. And I went from, my first grade was a D in my first essay. And I went from that to getting straight A pluses in their classes. I took the same 2 teachers over and over for 4 years. And I wrote in that article I published, Mary Holiday's, I wrote, "It's no surprise that I became a writer. People walk through doors, not walls." And I used to love math. I was like a math whiz kid. I made my dad was a mathematician, and, he did economics and stuff. But I'd make him Sunday morning. I'm like, give me like 100 math problems to do. That was my idea of a good time.
Oh, wow. Not mine, but okay.
Right. But that math teacher destroyed me. That I hated, and the science teacher was also anti-Semitic, and I hated math and science after that. Hated. See? Anyhow, so back at Barnard. So I came to Barnard, with this passion of, there's a gazillion Orthodox Jews, and of course I freaked everyone out because while I was totally sneeze, like, my sleeves were down to my wrists and my skirt was pat, but I was punk rock, and nobody had seen that before, and I'd walk into Orthodox services and people were just like, what?
Dang. No, I get that because I went through that same period. I wasn't Orthodox, but I had these freaking amazing, like what I call like my bondage dressy skirt that went down to my ankles. Like I had that, but it was still very punky with the piercings and the like.
I had short spiked hair, black leather jacket with chains, spray paint.
And
but my black leather jacket
tucked under your skirt.
No, my black
Doc Martens.
No. My black leather jacket with chains and spray paint had stars of David all over the place. Like just the chains. The chains were these. I had these before. Subliminal, the rapper in Israel, he has these huge stars of David. I was doing that circa 1987, right? So they were like hanging on my black leather jacket. I never wore Doc Martens. I liked the Victorian, like lace-up boots.
Oh, those are very cool, though. With the little heels.
We're getting very detailed here. Yeah!
Yeah, those are cool.
So I was always into those. Like, I had leather boots up to my knee, and you had to crisscross
me too.
Them kind of thing.
Me too. In fact, I used to, I'd have to plan very carefully where I was going, because if I was going to somebody's house and I'd have to take them off, it was like a no-go.
Right.
It was like a no-go.
Right.
It's like, I can't make it.
And then, that's devotion right there. And then years later, they developed the ones with the zipper on the side. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, it's still all lacy on the front.
No, can't do it. I'm a purist. I'm a purist. Can't do the zipper. Okay. Can't do the zipper.
That's funny.
Oh shoot.
So I didn't know you're of like mind on that punk front. That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Well, you know what? Just to digress a little bit, when I was in just entering high school, here I'm going to date myself. We're talking about Lecture Company before we started airing. Deborah Harry was like the girl. Right. And while she wasn't, I wouldn't define her as punk or anything. I actually wouldn't, because they were so light. But the look of her, I wanted to look like that so badly. And I was like, how could I be Blondie? So I was kind of like the black girl Blondie for a while there. But
that's awesome.
That look, and that I grew up around that era of, like the Sid Viciouses, that sounds weird, but very much that kind of influence in the background was like that real hardcore kind. And I like the look. Well,
it's interesting.
Kind of bastardized after a while.
Right, and corporate. But, somebody interviewed me from, I think it was Jew School, interviewed me about one of my albums and was asking about why punk. And I had to kind of stop and think. And because I gravitated to, I only listened to classical music, and I studied at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music, playing flute and piano my whole childhood. And then I was 16, and my best friend gave me a mixtape. She's like, it's time for you to become a teenager. And it was all like new wave, punkish kind of music. And I fell in love. I mean, I feel like that's what my mom must have felt like when she found Judaism. I was like, my soul has come home.
Oh my God.
And I was such a good girl look until then, and then I'm like, shaving my hair in spikes and all that.
I get it.
So, and I think what it is so I think people have a really weird relationship to anger. I think anger is glorious. It's beautiful. It's the heart's expression that something is wrong here. And I see it as a manifestation of love. And when anger is suppressed, that's when it becomes violent. That's when it becomes dangerous. Yes. But when it's expressed, I like that, express, suppress. I got to do something with that. Anyhow, when it's expressed, it's glorious, And what I saw, at least the punk and punk light music I was listening to, was people who were angry. And it's like, I felt like there was something beautiful about it, though. It didn't feel to me wallowing in the anger, or maybe they were, but I wasn't. Like, to me, it was a doorway. It was an opening.
Get it out.
Yeah. It was an opening. It was like, see the darkness, look at the darkness, hold up the darkness to the light and say, this needs to change, right? Mm-hmm. And people are so scared of anger. I had a bottle smashing range in my 20s. I was like, I am getting this out. Yeah. This is not mine, And I think that was my attraction to punk. And I think also that, you were talking about the aesthetic. I think there was something beautiful about, when I was a little girl, I just spontaneously started pulling things out of garbage and making things out of them. And this was before, recycling became hip and stuff. And I was just like, can I make toys out of garbage, And there was something about punk that I think it's the same thing. You create beauty out of something that's trash. And my style back then was I would go to some boutique in, the Village in New York, and I buy some really hoity-toity like silk blouse, right? Like very kind of upper crust. And then I just wear like shredded tights and, my boots. And, it was kind of like this. Yeah, it was like garbage and high end in one outfit,
Totally get it. You're speaking my language of my like early 20s, late teens. And I remember when I dated my then became ex, and I had this particular outfit on, and I'll never forget, he was just like horrified. And I was like, I think it's creative and cool, But
exactly.
Now, let's swing to something else, because talk about jumping all over the place.
Okay.
I don't want to not touch on music, your relationship with music, okay?
Yeah.
Let's just like fire away.
Okay, I want to finish though. I want to just come back to the thread we set for like literally a minute.
Oh yeah, because we did bookmark stuff, didn't we?
Right. So how we got on, I have a freakish memory. So it's good because I also have like, my mom was ADHD, and I don't think I am ADHD, but I grew up with an ADHD mom. So I have 7 conversations at once just by nature.
Okay.
But my freakish memory allows me to come back. So what I was saying was I went to Barnard with my heart open, for the Jewish community. And then it was super Ashkenazi. And the thing is, the whole Jewish community was super Ashkenazi when I was growing up. But I was like on Iraq Island. My home was Iraq Island, right? But all of a sudden I didn't have that. And I was just in this Ashkenazi ocean. And my junior year, I think, senior, I can't remember, year of college, there was a kvetching session by the Jewish office. We didn't have Hillel there back then. And even the name of the kvetching session was something I wanted to kvetch about, which is why is everything Ashkenazi. So even this kvetching session is a Yiddish word.
Exactly. I was thinking about a Yiddish word.
Yeah, exactly. And what I said was so basic. I said, I would really like it if we had one of the prayers during services and, kind of rotate for the Kiddush on Shabbat and have something that's Sephardic. And I was attacked. I was just like attacked. I won't get into the details, but it was awful. And I walked away going, I will never, ever again ask Ashkenazim permission to please include us. And I started Student Organization of Jews from Iran and Arab countries. I launched it first at Columbia, and then I continued it in Los Angeles, and then that led to numerous other organizations that I founded and led. And what was interesting was one of the ways I was attacked, one of the kind of pushbacks was, well, Loolwa, it's maybe you and one other person on campus who are Sephardic. So, I can't remember his exact words after that because I was livid, but it was something along the lines of, therefore it's irrelevant, right? And I gave him the same response then that then became my response to the rabbis, which we talked about before, which is, you don't know that. And even if you're Ashkenazi, the fact that this doesn't interest you is a problem, because are we Jews or are we Jews?
Exactly.
And when I started SOJAC, Student Organization of Jews from Iran and Arab countries, all of a sudden, wouldn't you know it, there's all of these Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews who showed up out of nowhere who hadn't been going to anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. But not only did that happen, but because the language I used was, Jewish X from Y, right? Jewish, let's do a Jewish Shabbat from, Iran, whatever it was. Therefore, what? Ashkenazim showed up, and that had never happened. Sephardic was not sexy back then. No Ashkenazim went to anything Sephardic. Sephardic was dirty. It was backwards. It was barbaric. And they came to my programs. So I knew I was onto something. And so I was talking about the two of the core principles of my work that were revolutionary. One was I was like, you don't need to be an expert on it, but identify you're really talking about Ashkenazi. Just say that. Just say Jewish from Central and Eastern Europe. Your job's done. Number 2 is, when I'm doing programs or when other Sephardim and Mizrahim are doing programs, let's call it Jewish from, because otherwise people aren't going to relate. And the third prong of my work, and that really is kind of like, it was just those 3 prongs over and over again in different ways, was this one time I was given a presentation to the Women's Council of the Jewish Federation in Los Angeles. And it happened to fall between Purim and Pesach. I was burning the midnight oil. And what I had noticed was while Ashkenazim came to my events, you know, which is great, that's an improvement, they kept saying you and us. And I'm like, how do I get them to say we? How do I get them that? Like, it obsessed me. Yeah. You know, other 21-year-olds were going out partying. I was like staying up all night. How do I get them to say we? And so this one presentation was between Purim and Pesach. And I was like, oh my God, I got it. So I start the presentation the next morning. I go, what holiday we just celebrate? Purim. Good. Where did Purim take place? Persia. Where's Persia today? Iran. How many of you know how Iranian Jews celebrate Purim? Dead silence. What holiday are we about to celebrate? Passover. Where did Passover take place? Egypt. How many of you know how Egyptian Jews celebrate Passover? Dead silence. But that second question, heads started to nod. And then I said the words that I remember to this day, even though it was like freaking, 25, 30 years ago. And I used it in every single program. As we go story by story through the history and heritage of the Jewish people, we find that Judaism is rooted deeply in the Middle East and North Africa. Abraham and Sarah, Moses and Miriam, the first yeshivas, the Talmud, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So then, you know, I kind of make the point of, and yet we know little or nothing about that today. Why?
Exactly.
And at the end of this presentation, a woman raised her hand. She goes, what do we... And I could almost not hear the rest of her question because I'm like, she said we!
She said we! Oh gosh, she probably I would bet too when she said we, your face changed and she was probably like, why is she grinning like that? I haven't even finished. What? But you did it.
Yeah.
Dang.
And that was a game changer. Yeah. You know, the same thing happened, and I'm going to wrap this up because I know you want to talk about my music, but the same thing happened, the Jewish Multicultural Curriculum Project. I specifically launched it at a school that was super Ashkenazi. These kids were blonde. I mean, it was like as, you know, as European as you get.
Right.
And I did it on purpose because I was on I wanted to put to rest this question of, we're only Ashkenazi here. This doesn't apply to us. I'm like, yes, it does. Let me show you. So when this blonde-haired, blue-eyed, freckle-faced, light-skinned kid raised her hand and said, wait, I'm confused. So when we were in Ethiopia, and again, I was like, I can pack it up and go home. It has been accomplished, right? That is the goal. That this is all of us. All of us, all of us, all of us.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You know, when you mention about when people say, but we're only Ashkenazi or there's only one or two, whatever, I always go to that phrase that I'll say in English, but I would like to think we all know it, or a good portion of it, that saying, know before whom you stand. And I always think of that because it's like, know before whom you stand. And I interpret it as, don't assume that you are standing in front of who you think you are standing in front of.
Right.
Know before whom you stand.
You know, it's interesting because the Jewish Multicultural Curriculum Project was so powerful on so many levels. First of all, the kids loved it. I mean, I had kids complaining. It was a Reform synagogue. It was like 2 hours after public school or private school. I had kids complaining when it was Thanksgiving because they couldn't go to Hebrew school. The typical thing is kids don't want to go to Hebrew school. They wanted to come to my class because it was so awesome. Nice. And they learned about Jews everywhere. And some other things that happened from that program, like there were kids who in public school would educate their teachers. Like there was this one girl, also super light skin, you know, light hair, light eyes, came to me the year after. Like I was still teaching the same grade. She had graduated. Uh-huh. She came to me. She's like, hey, Loolwa, you know, my class, we were learning about Ethiopia in my school, and they didn't say anything about Jews. And I taught the whole class about Ethiopian Jews.
Snap.
You know, those are the kinds of things. Yeah. It's like you want to cry. It's like, you know, oh my God, they're now the emissaries.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm going to leave you with this one. I know I keep saying I'll get to the music, but just I have to tell you this one story. So there was this girl in the class, my first year teaching at this school, who was a wallflower. I did not know her name halfway through the semester. I mean, this girl just was not involved at all. Never spoke up, nothing. And then we remember that presentation I told you that I did, The Jews Afloat, which followed Jewish migration.
Right.
So I created a curriculum that was just that, but it was spread out over time. So when Jews went here, we'd stop and study that community for 1 month. Okay, now we pick up, and now we're moving over to where this community went. Now we're studying that community. So when we got to Mizrahim and Sfardim, I created all these packets. So it was like, and I created groups, like groups of, 3 or 4 kids. So who wants, religious traditions from Yemen? Who wants, the culture of Iranian Jews? Who wants, and this wallflower girl, when I'm saying this, she starts slamming down the hands of everyone at her desk. She won't let them raise their hands. I'm like, okay, something weird's going on over there. Mm-hmm. And then I get to who wants Iraqi Jewish history? And she grabs their hands. She makes everyone at the table raise their hands. And when I'm going around and I'm distributing, the packets and I come to that table and I start to hand the packet, Iraqi Jewish history. She launches herself out of the chair. Like she basically, how do I describe this? It's like she's still in her chair, but she kind of throws herself out of the table into my face. Yeah. She goes, I'll have you know that my father is 100% Iraqi. He grew up in Baghdad. And I was like, bam! That was my point. Nobody would have known if we hadn't been studying Iraqi Jews. Oh, gosh. Got another chill. I discovered I had a survey at the end of that year. And I had very detailed questions. And I discovered that there were kids that they were Ashkenazi, but someone in their family married a black person who wasn't Jewish, but when they studied Ethiopian Jews, suddenly they didn't feel a schism. There was a kid in that class who was known as the trouble kid. Like you got a warning about that kid before you got him in your class that year. He was half Palestinian and half Ashkenazi. He was not a problem in my class. Why? Because we studied about Jews that looked like his Palestinian side and that spoke Arabic.
There you go.
So he found a bridge between, I'm getting emotional again, he found a bridge between his two warring, his parents were divorced. He had these two warring sides. Right. No wonder he was a problem kid. He was acting out.
Exactly.
But he found a peace, an inner peace when he learned about Mizrahim.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the key. And that's why the work you do is so important. Full stop.
Thank you.
Full stop. So let's talk about music. I'm not going to sing because I can't sing.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you can from the clip, that little clip I just heard.
Okay, I liken my voice to, and I love this singer, and I wish it was as good as his, at least have the energy of a Joe Cocker. I'm kind of right around there.
I don't know who Joe Cocker is. Yeah! Sorry.
Okay, so your homework, and you can't cheat, is to Google Joe Cocker, but 60s Joe Cocker. 60s Joe Cocker.
Oh, okay.
Okay? He's no longer with us. He's a British kind of soul singer, bluesy singer. He was at Woodstock, too. He's very cool. And he had very interesting stage presence. So please, Joe Cocker, I will send you a couple of songs in particular I'd like you to hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bring it.
And then you'll say, then you go, that's how her voice sounds? Okay, so you have a huge tie to music, clearly, right? Even when you said you play flute, you piano, you studied music, you founded an alternative rock band called, I love that, Iraqis in Pajamas. First, okay, before I even go any further, where'd you get that name from?
So I went to Israel every year from age 18. All of my relatives live there on my dad's side, which is, this is opening a whole other Pandora's box, but that's the only family I grew up knowing. And they all lived in Ramat Gan. And what happened was after they fled from Iraq in 1950, my grandfather, after the Ma'abarot, the tents that they went through, my grandfather got an apartment in Ramat Gan, which is where all the Iraqi Jews went. And then all of my aunts settled in like a 1-block radius. So that's like the whole family is there. And so I would go stay when my grandfather transitioned, he left the apartment to my family. And so that's where I'd stay whenever I go to Israel. And I went every year. I felt very close ties to Israel. I moved there for a number of years.
Oh.
Anyhow, so, yeah. So it was really funny because I was still Orthodox, and all of my friends most of my friends were Orthodox, and they would all go to Jerusalem to study in the summer, and I go to Tel Aviv and club in the punk rock clubs. And so I would be in Tel Aviv, dancing all night, because dance also, it's these things, when you look back on my life, you can kind of see it foreshadowed, although I didn't know. So I'd be at these clubs, and people would say to me, where are you living? And I'd say Ramat Gan. They go, Iraqi in pajama mat, like Iraqis in pajamas. I thought it was hilarious. So what the backstory is, there's like different backstories depending on, where you're researching or who you're talking to. But the overall understanding is that it was derogatory. There was a habit of the Iraqi Jews in Israel, at least, to get home from work and get into their pajamas. Now, it's
okay, like I do that.
This was a thing, Exactly. Thank you. So that's the other thing, is I've been a freelancer since graduating college, with one small, tiny exception. I have run my own show, and I have basically lived in pajamas and mismatched slippers with my hair sticking out in 7 directions, right? So Iraqis in pajamas was like, yes, that's me! But I also just thought that phrase... Yeah, but I didn't care, because I was like, that phrase is hilarious. Yep. That's just like, if you just take that phrase, that is a hilarious phrase. And whether someone thinks something is derogatory or not, I thought it was really cool. Oh, you get home from work, you get in your pajamas. That sounds great to me. That's
yeah, no, I
why
think
the hell would you want to see in your work clothes?
It's a catchy name. It's cool. The backstory's cool. Hey, Iraqis in pajamas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. My gosh.
And it was interesting because it became an issue. Like, other people started getting very political about it. And I never meant it politically, but I was like, if I'm going to get political about it, what I have to say is that we need to keep a sense of humor. That, anything about Iraq has to always be serious and be about war. Or, like, if someone's done something derogatorily, I can only have an antagonistic relationship to it. I think when you take that name and you're creating a band that is preserving and throwing in people's faces the very culture they denigrated and tried to stamp out, and look, it's not stamped out. Exactly. F you. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
You don't get more punk than that.
Because it is kind of like a, thankfully people can't see me, but it's kind of like a this, you know what I'm saying? To them. Right? Exactly. And for those who can't see me, just use your imagination. But that's exactly what it is. And you're taking back, saying I'm going to take what you think you're burning me with, and I'm going to use it, and I'm going to uplift Iraqis, Iraqi music, my stuff, with what you think you're burning me with.
And this goes back to the anger thing, because it's playful. Do you know, there was a reporter who really, I was quite amazed. Like, I was almost like stunned. He caught my essence in a very short sentence in an article. I had written a book called Consequence. The subtitle is Beyond Resisting Rape. Again, there's a whole other thing, but I'm just going to say really quick for this point that I started hitting men who harassed me when I was in my 20s. Oh. And when I was doing my book tour, he was in the audience during one of the book tours, and he said that I looked confident, calm, and a tad amused, while everyone was freaking out that I was saying these things that they felt were really radical. And that is really me. It's like I will take something that's really messed up and mock it. Like, I have a theater of the absurd humor, And so it's not like I'm pretending that it's not oppressive how they're saying it. It's like, I'm bigger than you are, So I'm gonna have some fun with this, and I'm gonna throw it back in your face, and you're not gonna know what the F to do with it, and I'm gonna laugh. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. While I look at you all funny. Messed up and confused and
Yeah, I like to turn things on their head.
Awesome.
I like to turn things on their head in unexpected ways. My boyfriend, one of the things he loves about me is I have this sideways smile. It's like I've always got this kind of a, it's like everything amuses me.
Yeah. So you have this constant amuse, look at these people. Life is so silly. Look at all of y'all taking yourselves all so seriously. Well, I'm just over here just smiling at you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's cool. So I noticed, because I noticed that you have in your book, which we'll touch on also,
Sure.
2 pictures that struck me. Because full confession, I have your book. I can't say I've read it. I can say I am reading it.
Okay.
And the
All
one
good?
I'm referring to is The Flying Camel. Okay? Because
Yeah.
I immediately went and got it when
Nice.
when I researched you on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
So anyways, so now I've lost my track. Okay, so the
You
2
were
pictures.
reading
One
2
was
pictures,
with,
yeah. I will.
yeah, Ofra.
Oh,
No,
right.
going back a pit. Yes. And of
Right.
course, Iowa. So those 2 struck
Right.
me because huge fan
Yeah.
of both.
Yeah.
Iowa, I don't know as well, but I'll tell you something. They came to Toronto and I went and
nice.
saw them. And
Nice.
it was an intimate setting and I was blown away. Blown away. I danced till I
Yeah.
thought my feet would fall off. And I was just like, this is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, I'm a fan of the Yemenite Queen of Music. And we know
Right.
who I am referring to. Ofra.
Yep.
Like, so to see that. So tell me a little bit about the context behind those pictures. Because things don't just happen
Sure.
randomly. Or do they?
Sure.
Or do they? You know?
No. I wrote an article called Ofra Haza and Me. It's again in this Patreon membership thing I have. People have access to all of it. And it goes into detail, but I'll just give a little of the story. So I had an assignment, I think maybe in high school, write about your role models or heroes. And I didn't have any. Like, I didn't see anybody who reflected me anywhere. And then Ofra Haza came on the scene. And I was like, holy! You know, like,
Exactly.
and I became obsessed with meeting her. I stalked random Yemenites. Just like in Israel, I'm like, take me to your leader. I go to Yemenite
Pretty
synagogues, Yemenite restaurants.
Where is she?
Listen,
Where is she? Where's the queen? Where is she?
you know. Let me tell you, when I ran my PR company, I got clients who had never been able to get into media. I got them into top tier media because I am like a pit bull who sinks my teeth in, and I will not let go until I get what I'm going after. So I was like, I need to meet this woman. And I kept getting like really close. And this is pre-internet, pre-cell phone. You know, I kept getting really close. The closest I got was I found that she had worked at a restaurant in New York, a Yemenite restaurant. I went there, but I found out she had just quit a few months ago. Nobody knew where she went. And I was like, yeah!
Come on.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So 3 years, I'm like doing everything I can in the United States and Israel to meet this woman. Then the year after I graduated, my best friend, who is still at Barnard, she was younger than I was. She was doing like the pro-Israel advocacy event, which I had been doing then. She was doing it, and she did this. She organized a concert, an Ofra Haza concert, which I didn't know about, but I happened to be visiting. I went to visit her for like a few days, and the concert happened to fall on that day, but it was sold out. And I was like, yeah! Like, again, foiled again. And then one of the people who was signed up got sick. And I was like, I did not poison her. I did not, nothing to do with it. I did not.
Hold on,
I
hold
did
on,
not
hold on.
know that
That's
woman.
her story, and she's sticking to it. Okay.
So I was like, oh my God. So we go to the concert, and the seat was way in the back. Like all of the Columbia University students were like way in the back. And so I start, you know, I don't take things lying down. So I start just walking around. And I'm just like, you know, I go down to the stage. I'm like, there are 2 seats. And I just stand by these 2 seats that are empty. And the show's about to start. And the 2 seats are still empty. And I run and I grab my friend. And she's like, but people may, you know, they may come and they may sit there. I'm like, if they do, we'll give them the seats. Come on. So we went running down there. We sat. I'm in the freaking first row. Ofra Haza comes on. I was going crazy. My knee was bouncing up and down. I'm like, there she is! And she's like out of reach, right in front of my face. I mean, I was so close to her. She starts singing. It's like pearls are coming out of her mouth. She did not use any of the tech equipment. Oh my God. And I start, Rivka, looking at the stage. I'm like, that stage is low. And I'm really close to the stage.
Okay, no. No.
And yes. And then we get to intermission, and I'm like, I should jump on the stage. I should jump on the stage and run back. And then, I mean, I have always had a very transparent face. Like, I can't hide anything. And so I go over to the group of the students, and one of my friends from the group can tell something's going on. And she's like, what's up? And I'm like, well, I'm just thinking that stage is really low, and I've been trying to meet Ofer Haza, and I want to dive bomb the stage. And she goes, let's go! And she like grabs my hand. I'm like, really? Yeah, she grabs my hand. I'm like, really? She goes, yes! So we start running, and immediately it kicked, and I was like, yeah! So I end up overpowering her. The security, like, meaning, what does that mean? She was in front of me, pulling me, and then, my energy went through the roof, and then I went racing past her, and then the security guards come storming down the aisle, yelling at us, you can't, and I freaking dive bomb the stage under the curtain. They caught her, and I start running back. The security guards are now running after me, and they're now dive bombing the stage. I just start running around. I don't know where the heck I am. It was this huge stage. I end up in this room that's like another auditorium. I was very confused. I was like, did I end up back in the place that I came from? No, this is another room. And then I hear them going, where? Did you see this girl? Did you see this girl? I'm like, F! And then I just go running out of the room. I go running down the hall. And then I run into this room, and all the eminent dancers are there from her troupe. And I just go up to this one guy. I go, hi, my name's Loolwa Khazzoom. I run an organization called Student Organization for Jews from Iran and other countries. I've been trying to meet Ofer Haza for 3 years. I really want to talk to her. And he just looks at me very calmly, languidly, takes a drag on his cigarette, and goes, Ma? Which is what in Hebrew?
What?
And I go,
what? What?
Like he did. So I'm like talking a million words, and we're a million words a minute in English.
Yeah, and he's just like,
anything. Right? Yeah, exactly. And then I go, oh, Shmi Loolwa Khazzoom, Hithalti Argun Studenti Yehudi, and I just do the whole thing in Hebrew. And he just looks at me, pauses, takes another drag of his cigarette, goes, are you in a rush? In Hebrew, right?
Yeah.
And I realize somehow I've made it in. Nobody's kicking me out. And I go, no. And then he invites me to sit down. So I sit down, and, they're all very relaxed, and they asked me to tell my story more. And I'm like, well, I've been trying to meet her because, I started this organization, and I teach about Jews from the Middle East and North Africa, and it's really important to me to get in the mainstream. And she's like this, total role model because she's a musician, and she's, teaching people about Yemenite music and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And then they're like, okay, well, her dressing room's over there. You can go say hello. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? So I go to the
you didn't
dressing
pass
room.
out.
I know.
And miss your opportunity altogether.
I know. So I'm shaking. I go to the dressing room. I'm shaking, and the door opens, and it's this woman who I guess is like her assistant or something. She's like, she can't talk to you right now. She's getting ready to go on. I'm like, okay. And then I kind of explained to her the situation. She's like, okay, well, you can go talk to her manager. It's Betzalel Aloni, and he's over on the front, kind of like where I had come from, like on the stage area. Like the curtains were down, so he was on the stage, but behind the curtains. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, oh God, I had this sinking feeling because the security guards were still looking for me. And so then I'm like, okay, Loolwa, just act like you belong here. And I just start shouting random words in Hebrew to like various people as I pass by to just, have an air of belonging.
Hilarious.
And then I get to the stage, and Betzalel Aloni is there. And I had tried reaching him too because I had, stalked her and found out who her manager was. And So I told him my story. He thought it was the funniest thing. He just started laughing and laughing. And then he said, okay, well, you can come backstage after. And I was like, I just had this feeling like they're not going to let me backstage. And I was like, I'm really concerned they won't let me. He's like, no, I'll make sure. And look, I dot my I's and I cross my T's. I'm like, can I have your number? Here's my number.
Yeah, like, for real.
And I'm like,
give me your wallet so that you have to come find me.
Yeah. So I'm like, please make sure, blah, blah. Okay. So then I go and I sit down. I enjoy the rest of the show. I have my smile. I think my face was hurting because I was smiling so much.
Seriously.
Yeah. And then at the end, I immediately bolt over to the backstage door and security guard won't let me in. I'm like, that's how Lonnie said I can come in. You can't come in. But he said I can. You can't. Well, I need to see her. You can't. And I just would not let this man go. I was like in his face. I'm getting in. You got to get in. You got to go get Bessel. He said I could come in. Right?
Yeah,
Finally, I just annoyed the crap out of him to the point that he went and talked to someone backstage. And then he's like, okay, come around this other back entrance. So I come around. They wouldn't let me in either. Again, I'm like really like aggressive. I'm not going to say no. But I even tried sneaking in.
Again?
when some people came out, I tried sneaking past, Anyhow, finally. Yeah, exactly. Finally, the security guard goes, okay, like someone came to him and is like, okay, she's okay. So, and I brought my friends in with me. And so I'm getting emotional. It was like, oh my God, it's such a important moment for me, and I introduced myself to her and I gave her my business card and she was really impressed with the work I was doing. And then I told her about, how I dive bombed the stage. She thought it was hilarious. She just started laughing out loud. And then, we took 2 pictures. One was just me and her and one was, all my friends and her. And I could full on cry right now, seriously.
You know what? I think I'm actually going to cry. I continue.
Yeah. And I had that picture of her, like, there's so much to say about the Jewish Multicultural Curriculum Project, but before the kids started in the beginning year, I had pictures of places and faces, and I had ritual objects that represented Jews all over the world. And I also had, like right above my desk, I had these 2 pictures, and I taught the kids about her. And when she died, I was so distraught.
Oh God.
But even there, because
I cried like a baby and I didn't even have the connection you had.
Yeah.
Right?
But even there, because my understanding was that she had AIDS that she contracted from her husband, but she didn't want to bring shame on the family, and she died. And even there, she was my role model because I wasn't speaking up about the domestic violence in my family. And I was like, I need to speak up.
Wow.
And I did in the book, and it's a really hard, especially with a name like mine. I'm not Debbie Goldberg. I can't go anonymous ever unless I change my name, which I won't because it's mine.
Think?
Yeah,
you're no Lily.
Exactly. But I've been finding ways, because it's really important to me. How do you talk about trauma in a way that is compassionate and loving for the people, recognizing nobody would hurt someone else if they were not also traumatized? Mm-hmm. And that is unhealed trauma. When someone hurts someone else, that is unhealed trauma or mental illness, unhealed mental illness. Mm-hmm. It's something. No, people who are healthy don't hurt other people. Exactly. So how do you, like a core question of my music, actually pretty much almost all my songs has some variation of how do you simultaneously confront, like we were talking about the punk rock, hold that darkness up to the light, throw your bottles in your bottle smashing range, shout out loud, let it out, talk about what happened, and yet simultaneously not shame people, and simultaneously love people. How do you do that? That's the core.
Seriously, how do you do
work.
that? Yeah, how do you do that?
I have an answer at this point in my life. I do. I have an answer. Let me breathe. I need to breathe. I think sometimes something that seems like a horrible thing that happened can be a gift, depending on how we approach it. So I was diagnosed with cancer in 2010, and there's a whole story there, but I'll say the long and short of it is that I chose to see that as an opportunity to heal every level of my life. And I had already done profound healing. You know, it wasn't like I was someone walking around numb or, you know, not awake. Like, I was very awake. And I was pursuing my passions and speaking my mind, and, you know, and the bottle smashing range was already like, you know, 10 years behind me kind of thing. And, but we always have another layer to heal. There's always a place we can shine the flashlight. There's always some cobwebs in some dark corner that we don't know about, that we're not aware of. And so I considered surgery. I'm not against conventional medicine. I met with two surgeons, but something in my gut kept telling me no. And I was very active on Twitter back then, and I posed, and it was, you know, again, this is a whole other story. I had gone through debilitating chronic pain, and I healed myself through dance, and I had a lot of followers who were, you know, dealing with chronic health issues. So they were very wise. They often knew more than doctors knew. And so I posed to the Twitterverse. I said, you know, I kind of shared my story, and I said, so I posed to you, Twitterverse, how do I self-heal from cancer? And a woman I did not know who had been following my blog wrote back, the answer's in the question, you self-heal. And I was like, okay, I am taking this and putting it, like I'm putting it into art. I took a poster board and markers, and I wrote the question, how do I self-heal from cancer? And the I self-heal part I put in a different color. And then I sat and I faced the wall where I put the poster, and I played music, like had music playing, and I just meditated on it. And then I go, oh, I got it. I don't address the cancer at all. I address healing. And through that, the cancer disappears. And so I set about looking at every aspect of my life and what can I do now to heal? So I radically altered my diet. I started juicing. I did some juice fasts. I moved into a forest. A lot of things. I mean, this is a whole story in of itself, but a pivotal thing is I returned to my lost love of music. I had lost my music. I hadn't done any music for 13 years. And through all of my dietary changes and, you know, supplements and et cetera, the nodules stopped growing. Like, I cold stopped the growth of the nodules literally overnight. I got an ultrasound every 3 to 6 months. I got lab work, you know, so I was tracking it, right?
Yes.
And it just didn't grow but didn't shrink. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And then, like, 5 years into it, you know, again, I kept going deeper layer, deeper. Okay, ultrasound, didn't grow, didn't shrink. Okay, body, life, Loolwa, what now? What do we need to heal now? I would ask myself that. What now? You know, pose that question, and then the answer comes, right? Okay, let's do this. And 5 years into the journey, the answer was get the F out of where I was living, because I hated it, and move to Seattle and start a band. And don't ever lose your music again. The day after I moved to Seattle, I went to the waterfront to this gift store, and I got a keychain that was a guitar, and I put it on my keys on it so that I would look at that guitar every single day and be like, are you doing your music? 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 And I swore to myself, I will never, ever let my music go again. It was hard getting a band off the ground, but I did. And it was this band, Iraqis in Pajamas. And just a few months after, 3-4 months after I started the band, the nodules started shrinking for the first time. And so what ended up happening is, because I chose to approach cancer, I need to get up and shake because this is really intense talking about. Hold on a minute.
It's okay.
Because I chose to approach cancer as an opportunity to heal myself, it took me on a journey and adventure. And one of the gifts was, I had been this fighter my whole life. You know, fight the good fight, fight against injustice. And all of a sudden it was like, I'm not fighting anymore. Fighting is stress. I'm not doing stress. We don't do stress now. We do peace. We do love. We do harmony. And there's different ways of approaching things. I did not want to. There's a lot of people who envision, I can never remember which is the good and which is the bad, the white or the red blood cells, but they envision one of the blood cells attacking the other. They have a lot of that going on. I'm like, I don't want war in my body. I don't want to invite images of war in my body. But it was really radical, this idea of to send love to the place that, you know, had these nodules. Well, what if that makes it grow? What if you send love and it grows?
And it grows.
But, and you know, so it's frightening, right? But I ended up discovering, you know, I'm coming back to this question. I ended up discovering that whatever it was, I was in a hit and run head-on car collision in 1987. That sent me down the rabbit hole of the medical system. I went from bed to worse. I was alternately bedridden, housebound, wheelchair bound. And then I discovered that I could reconceptualize dance and use it to heal myself. So I healed myself to the point that I could bike 30 miles at a shot without pain, right? And then with the cancer, you know, I just radically changed my life. I live in the middle of a forest, you know. I'm in the most profound, healing, nurturing relationship with a man I've ever been in my life. This man is my soulmate, you know. I really struggled with men because I'm a really strong, really unique, really not scripted in any way, shape, or form woman, and it was really hard with men. You know, and so many changes in my life, and I feel peace. I feel a deep, deep peace. And my whole thing all along, you know, with my family, I'm relentless. I relentlessly tried to heal with different people. Now, one person, my mom, I mean, it was a violent, chaotic, really effed up family on so many levels. My mom did the work, you know. When I was 21, I stopped speaking to everyone for 2 years, and that was her wake-up call. And she got into therapy. She went to 12-step. Like my grandmother, her mother was a raging, violent alcoholic. She started going to 12-step, and, you know, we got really, really close. You know, it was always an intense, challenging relationship. There was always work to be done, but we both showed up. And, you know, she couldn't do as much as I could, and I was okay with that. I'm like, I'll go 90. You go 10, I'll go 90. I'm cool with that. You know, I got the capacity, right? Just you do your part, I'll do mine.
Wow.
So that's my thing. I mean, look, Iraq decimated the Iraqi Jewish community, and I love everything Iraqi. I connect with it. So I think that there's a space, and this is really what my goal is to bring to my work, especially in these times when there's so much angst and anger, and there is a place, I could get more into it, but because I've given it so much thought, and I am in a place of peace in my life, there is a place where you can love and accept and also honor your own wounds and the impact. And I think that because I faced everything head on from a young age, like as a very young child, I noticed that adults carried around ghosts and shadows, and I never wanted to do that. And so from a very young age, I got myself into therapy when I was 16. You know, my bottle smashing range was in my 20s. That was really radical. I mean, you know, neighbors kept calling police on me, and I was like, I'm not hiding. I'm not going inside. We all have rage. We all should be doing this. Get your own damn bottle smashing range or come to mine. You know, like, I was like, we need to do this. And I was committed to healing myself above and beyond any shaming or ridiculing or being called like mentally ill. A bunch of people thought I was mentally ill, you know, and I was like, cool, whatever. I went through the streets yelling and singing and dancing like shit you don't, you don't do. Stuff you don't do. And so what happened was I transformed myself. I became the little girl. There's a picture of me when I'm little. I was like 3 years old, so full of light and life and just this unbridled joy. And I am that person. You know, that person got submerged, and I brought her back to life, and that is who I am now. And it's because I faced all the darkness. And I think that's the thing, is that people keep avoiding the darkness. There is no avoiding it. It's going to eat you alive if you don't face it. You face it, you go through it. You ask for help. You do what you need to do. And when you do that, it doesn't control you. When you do that, you can talk about it. You can be open about it. You can sing about it, write about it, share with people about it. You can hold the people accountable who hurt you. You can hold the nation or state or whatever that hurt you accountable. You're not hiding it. You're not pretending it didn't happen. You're not sweeping it on the rug. But that's not yours. It happened. It happened. So what are you going to do with it? That's the question. So that's been the core of my life. You know, cancer, chronic pain. My mom had dementia. She had a traumatic brain injury. I took care of her for 11 years. It was one of the most sacred thing of my life, actually. And so the question is, it happened. Now what? What are you going to do with it? And what happens if you infuse it with love?
Wow. I'm just like, You left the podcaster speechless. I felt every word you said.
Thank you.
And I'm not just happy for you. I think it's a bigger emotion than that. For where you sit today, from what the snippets that I found out about you and where you are today and the work you did to get there, I don't have the words, but I can tell you my heart feels full hearing what you just said.
Thank you. And I hear it in your voice, and it really touches me.
Thank you. Because we all have some darkness, and we all struggle with how do I get there? You know what I mean? Yeah. And to hear you so clearly tell us your journey to where you sit today. Wow. Okay. All right. This feels like, I'm going to tell you something, and we can talk about it offline, but this feels like a part 2.
Okay.
I want to speak with you more.
I'd love to.
I feel like just the surface has been scratched, and I'll be a little selfish. No, I'll be a lot selfish. I want to hear more from you for me.
I'd love to.
That's it.
I'd love to.
That's it. So
I mean, that's really
all right. Now I'm going to take that cleansing breath.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Sorry, you were saying?
No, I just want to say that's work is a weird word. I don't like the word work because it connotes a lot of things I don't mean. But that's my being now. My being with a capital B. I want to share my journey. And look, it's really different. I used to have a power shoot and a PowerPoint, and I was all about persuading people. Like, how do I get them to say we? How do I get them to say we? Or how do I get this client into the media? How do I get this client into the media? Right? It was, I had a mission, I had an agenda. I was persuading. I was like, okay.
How do I chase down Afra?
Exactly. It was like, how do I take all of these pieces and rearrange them so that it plays out in something that's, higher, that's uplifted, that's, and I've come to, I'll tell you, I mean, this is a big one, and I feel very vulnerable sharing it, but the medical system, so much to say about the medical system. And people assume that if you talk about the darkness in the medical system, you don't recognize the light, and that's not true. That's not true. But there's a lot of darkness in the medical system. As you can probably tell by now, I am fierce. And I took care of my mom like a mother bear. You did not F with her. I intervened on so many levels, so many times. There are 10 times that I counted that she literally would have died if I hadn't been intervening and doing it as fiercely as I did. And yet, even with all that, throwing my whole being, everything I had at the situation, my mother died from medical negligence because there was a cluster F at the end that had so many things going on. Like, there were so many things happening simultaneously that were all code red. It was beyond me. And that was 3 years ago. And
so sorry.
Thank you. And I spent most of the last 3 years beating myself up because I didn't rescue her, and I turned on myself, like scorching, like looking for what could I have done differently. And it was a very painful, but a very healing lesson because I finally understood, because every time I go through it, it's like, I go through it with my therapist, right? I'd make the same choice again. And I concluded finally, there was nothing I could do. It was bigger than me. But I have to tell you.
Yeah, but you had to get there.
What do you mean?
Like, you had to get to that conclusion.
Right.
Yourself.
Right.
You had
but
to
I have
work
to
your
tell
way
you
to that conclusion.
Yes. But I have to tell you something I'm very proud of. Because, again, we can get in this story another time in our part 2 or maybe part 3. I don't know. But anyhow, the level of things and the amount of things and the intense barrage of things that were going on, I swear to God that God was like, what is does it effing take to get through this woman and end this person's life? This woman does not let it happen. She's like blocking us so it was like God had to like turn up to like turbo level. And it reminds me, when I was a little girl, you know, I was this like feminist out the box. I mean, I didn't need to study feminism. I just was when I was born. And because boys thought they were, you know, better or stronger or whatever than girls, I used to terrorize all the boys. And I never actually hit anyone, but I just go up to them into their face and go, oh, you think you're stronger than girls, do you? And they'd be like, ah! And they go running away. And then I chase them, right? So there's all these boys that I terrorize. Okay, one day I was playing on the bars, you know, like girls often played on these, it was kind of like gymnastic stuff. So I was doing all these, you know, twirls and whatever on the bars. Yeah. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, yeah. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 7 boys pin me down. And I yell, it takes 7 of you to get 1 of me!
Oh, wow.
So I feel like it's the same thing. It's like, you know, I was so fiercely protective of my mom that it took an S-storm to finally overpower me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't handle it that I was overpowered because I am someone that never accepts impossible. I never accept that word. No, it's not impossible. How do we do it? Let's look at it this way.
This is how do we get there?
I'll end
how do we get there? How do I get them to say we? How do we get there?
That's it. And my mom, I'll end with this. This is what my mom used to say to me all the time. You kick it, you stand on your head, you turn it upside down. Like, she'd go through this list of things that I do until I figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I poke at it. I'm like, I won't let it alone. I'm like, what about this way? What about this way? What about this? What about this?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's beyond our control. And let me just take a breath. So it was an extremely painful lesson, but an extremely healing one, because I am now in a place of peace. I don't anymore hold myself responsible for everything in the world. I used to take on everything. I mean, I used to joke that the police department should put me on payroll, because if I thought anything that looked even mildly squirrely, I was there. I was involved. Okay. You know? And now it's like I've come, you know, sometimes we have to go through really painful things. And I've come to this place of, I'm in a place of simultaneously accepting what is, allowing for the possibility of what can be, and breathing into it. And I think that it's, you know, I think that, well, I can't say for anybody else. I can say for me, how I approach things now is I allow the support of the universe. Like, I don't have to fix it all or do it all myself. And so I will face a situation and I'll say, okay, what is my heart's intention here? Like, what is causing my heart pain? What is my heart's desire? What's my heart's intention? And then I will pray. I will say, please guide me. And it's never, please guide me on how to get this. It's never a specific thing. It's like, please guide me on how to bring harmony into this relationship, or how to feel at peace with this person, or how. So it's a very kind of a open question. And then with that question in my heart, I dance. I go to the beach. I play music. And it comes. It evolves. It becomes the it's not like God's like, oh, do this. It's like the thing becomes.
Natural evolution, a natural conclusion.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, sounds like we're going to have another conversation.
Okay.
One day for certain, for sure. Thank you doesn't feel like enough, but thank you. Thank you so much. You have given me so much to think about. You gave me a great story to smile about, and maybe I'll get brave and dive bomb a stage one day too. You are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much from here. And I do want to continue this conversation. Loolwa Khazzoom. Nahon?
Nachon. Thank you, Rivka. Toda. Ashkorak. That's Judeo-Arabic. Ashkorak.
I like that.
Yeah.
Hey, you might have to give me some lessons.
Okay.
All right. So
Okay.
until another day, thank
Sounds
you.
good. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Riv Kush. Our producer is Michael Freeman. Music by Westside Gravy, and I am Riv Kush. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can hear more at thecjn.ca/RivKush and support us by subscribing. If you want to support the CJN, join the CJN Circle. You get quarterly magazines, invitations to live events, and a weekly printable edition. Learn more at thecjn.ca/circle. Thanks for listening.